welcome your family and friends who joined you. I want to welcome your mentors who have been behind you, supporting you through this entire 3-month course. And I want to thank the Board of Directors, some of whom are here today, because without their support and their championship of this class committee, we would not have been here today. So thank you to the Board of Directors of the Untitled Chapter. I would like to introduce the chapter president, Elsa Roberts. Elsa has championed the class committee to go forward to plan and organize and coordinate a basic training class for new Texas Master Naturalists. And she did that with us for 18 months, which was not our original tenure. And yet we did it. We overcame the pandemic, and we even tried to start the class during the polar freeze. And here we are, 3 months later, with 25 new members in our chapter. I think that's exceptional work, and I thank Elsa for her support.
Cheryl's done an outstanding job with this class, a unique class, a class that we have conducted in a new way that we've never done before. So I'm going to later mention some of the firsts that this class has gone through. But first I would like to announce the first time that our graduation ceremony has been able to host a dignitary. So I would like to introduce and call up our Mayor of Kerrville, Mayor Blackburn.
I promise my remarks will be brief. I want to thank you for being able to participate today. I've gone to several of your meetings at the UGRA building and found it very interesting. I cannot stay today, but I especially want to hear the presentations today on water, and I'll tell you why. But my next column in the newspaper is going to be on the water situation here locally. But my campaign pledges when I ran for mayor in 2018 and 2020, the first two were, first was to protect our water resources. Second was to preserve the natural beauty of the area. We have done a good bit on that. In the 2050 plan, the comprehensive plan of the city, when you go through it, it is amazing how much is there in terms of natural beauty and protection of water. The city has completed a 100-year water study. Now we're doing another water study related to, that was basically the sources. Now we're doing a water study on distribution of water and what's happening there. But I felt very strongly that we needed to kick it up a notch in these areas, both of water and natural beauty. And so I put together a coalition called Kerr Area Partners for Preservation. And today we have at least 3 members of that: Elsa, Rebate, and Becky. Where's Becky back here? From Riverside Nature Center, who does a great job, Becky Esler. By the way, that name, the acronym is CAP, and I'm pushing that we have caps that are caps, but I don't, that was supposed to be humorous. Okay, let me explain real briefly what it is. Finding ways to get information out, and the information, most of it is already there among the Native Plant Society, Master Naturalist, folks that are working on dark skies, and one after another. And this is a diverse coalition of folks representing a lot of groups. Second is networking, and I know a lot of that is already happening, but how do you network the organizations that are committed to these issues and the individuals? We have two individuals that have just moved here that have superb background in these kinds of things, in metropolitan areas. How do they apply that here? And then the other is action. We're looking at identifying historic trees, doing a tree walk. I hope that we're going to do something annually on pollinators. And again, I know that there are other folks that are working on this, but can we help? Can we help to get the word out, to advertise it? But the other urgency for me is we're growing. Kerr County and Kerrville is growing. I fear we're going to look up a few years and some of that natural beauty is gone. Some of those beautiful trees are gone. And we are stewards of what is here. So I'm committed to that, and great to see you today.
Thank you, Mayor Blackburn, for those words and for the effort in the community here. I want to introduce the members of the 2020-2021 New Class Committee. Y'all come forward. I want to see all of y'all. Come please. See how hard it is? All of y'all, please come forward. When we started in January of 2020, we created a mission for ourselves as a committee, and I want to read to you what our mission was. We are a team of Texas Master Naturalists who will create a thoughtful curriculum that is exciting and involved, and it's an example of the Texas Master Naturalist way of education, outreach, and volunteer service. And we will embrace our students, affirm them, and support them to become the next stewards of our natural world. That's what we created as our mission. And I want to thank all of these people. Look at them. There's a group photo being taken because this is the first time we've all really stood together like this because we've been busy doing our jobs. But their focus has been steady, and they've held their hand on my hand at the helm of this. We survived a pandemic, and we even tried to start the class during the polar freeze, and here we are. And I just have to say, each one of these individuals has made a remarkable impact on that success. And I say to all of y'all, we have accomplished our mission, and we have another one, and you're going to hear about it in a moment. But first I want to ask Alice King to come forward, and I want you to know who each of these people are. I'm going to say their name, probably not in the mic. Susan Parker from Kerrville, Robert Schock and Constance Weaver from Pipe Creek, Ron Childers from Pipe Creek, Pat Lucas from Bernie, Billy Guillen from Fredericksburg, Carla Stang from Hunt, Wendy Leonard from Bernie, Frank Garcia from Kerrville, Mildred Dorsey from Kerrville, Janice Arterberry from Bandera, and Bernard Warren from Miko. Wow. Who is not present is Lonnie Phillips from Kerrville. He's working today. Gracie Wagner's on vacation. She was our refreshment person. Y'all remember her from the first class. And Diana Armhurst from Fredericksburg. So it's a great group of people. We represent our jurisdiction, and I can't thank everybody enough. Thank you.
Thank you. From our class, this is all country. These are sign-ups from us, state resident of Texas. Thank you for helping us grow. Thank you.
We have to quickly also say that none of this would have happened also without our great leader, Cheryl.
Okay, we've accomplished one mission, but we have another one, and it's about to start. It's about water. We created a roundtable in our curriculum planning, and we called it Our Water, Our Future, Ours to Protect. And today, this is the next mission. I invite everyone to participate. This committee has put together A roundtable is an unprecedented way to teach everyone in our communities about the critical water issues in the Hill Country. I want to introduce Daniel Oppenheimer. He's going to be the moderator of this esteemed panel of three, whom you will spend some time with getting to know. Daniel is the land program manager for Hill Country Alliance. He is an alliance builder. He's a partner builder, partnership builder. He is passionate about the heritage of our rangelands in the Hill Country. He teaches and educates what all of us need to know about our land, our neighbor's land, and our entire beautiful Hill Country. He graduated from the Washington University in St. Louis. He has a master's degree from Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Management. And I just thank you. It's a privilege to have you here today and to begin our roundtable. First time ever. Thank you, Cheryl.
All right, can y'all hear me in the back okay? All right, well, welcome and good morning. I'd like to thank Cheryl for organizing today's roundtable and to each of you for joining this important discussion. If we can go to the next slide. Over the next couple hours, we're going to hear from some remarkable people and how they have protected our precious water resources. Before I introduce our speakers, however, I've been asked to provide some brief context for how water is managed in Texas. This is a complicated topic, and I will barely even scratch the surface of the surface. Awesome, thanks. So in Texas, we have 2 banks from which to draw water. About 38% of that comes from rivers and lakes, surface water. The rest comes from our aquifers or our groundwater. We know, especially in the Hill Country, with our porous and fractured limestone geology, that these 2 banks are intricately connected. However, in the state of Texas, we treat the management of water differently depending on where we draw it from, whether that's beneath our feet or from a creek or a river. So we've had some recent rains in the past couple of weeks. When those raindrops are absorbed and percolate into the soil, this groundwater is considered property of the surface owner. Based on the rule of capture, that landowner has the right to pump and capture all the water beneath their feet. Or at least that was the case up until the second half of the 20th century. Starting in 1949, the state legislature authorized the establishment of groundwater districts that today help monitor and conserve groundwater resources in most, but not all counties across the state. So when those raindrops, they get absorbed and they percolate into the soil, we know that they can then emerge from a spring and flow into a creek or a river. So when they emerge into the surface, they become the property of the state. That same raindrop can now become the property of the state. And it's managed by surface water rights prioritized by seniority, or what we sometimes refer to as first in time, first in right. And when they're on the surface, those raindrops are governed by a different set of agencies, such as the Texas Council on Environmental Quality or a river authority. Another aspect of water management that will be highlighted from today's speakers is what should be done with treated wastewater. The TCEQ oversees the permits for wastewater discharge, and really there are 2 permitted options. An industrial facility can either choose to use what's referred to as land application, where that treated wastewater is reused, perhaps to irrigate crops, green spaces, or maybe even a golf course. Or that industrial facility may seek a permit to discharge that treated effluent directly into a stream, lake, or another waterway. So again, I'm trying to keep this as high level as possible, scratching the surface of the surface. Hopefully that provides enough context to meet our speakers where they're at and understand the rich experiences that they're offering today. So with that, we're going to hear from our three presenters. Their detailed bios should be in your course materials. Each speaker will present for about 30 minutes. Please hold your questions until the end. And then when we do have questions, we're going to have microphones that we'll bring to you so that everyone in the room can hear your question, including the panelists. So we'll have about a 30-minute time for Q&A afterwards. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, Annalisa Peace. Annalisa Peace is the Executive Director of the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, and she has held a critical role in leading the fight to protect Hondo Creek, which is just downstream from where we are today. So with that, Annalisa, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, thanks, Daniel, for doing such a good lead-in. So that you set me up really well for explaining these discharge permits and all. So we're going to talk about Hondo Creek. There's a map there. Take this so I can. Actually, yeah, this is a map of the area in Comal County where we have Hondo Creek. It's those properties on the map that are Banchik or Solution. And next. Groups were organized around issues like this, where people were upset about projects or permits being issued in their area that were going to negatively impact their natural resources. And we've been around since 2005. Sorry, it didn't seem to be working. Oh, thanks. You're about to say next. Yeah, so this is not the first time we've contested one of these permits. Since 2005, we've done contested about 20 permits. We have a pretty good track record of not getting the TCEQ to deny the permits, but usually negotiating settlements or getting the permits amended so they're actually more protective of our waterways. So in the fall of 2018, this one popped up. We were already contesting, I think at the time, 3 other permits. When we contest these permits, we help the folks in the area get organized. We can act as fiscal agent, so the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance will take donations, tax-deductible donations, and dedicate all that money towards legal fees and expert witnesses and all for these contested cases. So on this one, our hair stood up, frankly, because this is directly upstream from one of the purest, most pristine areas, natural areas and natural streams in the state of Texas. The Hondo Creek State Natural Area was preserved by the state of Texas for its ecological value. So it's also immediately upstream of Guadalupe River State Park, which is one of the most popular recreational areas for swimming. So we had a potential of actually polluting those waters with 500,000 gallons a day of treated sewage effluent. And the permit, they were saying these are high standards, but those standards required by the state for treatment are not actually protective enough to protect something like this from happening. Yeah, so the 2 watersheds of the state natural area, the catchment area of the Edwards Aquifer, about 25 miles north of San Antonio. So the catchment area is adjacent to the Edwards Aquifer recharge zone. And this is highly problematic as well because often the boundaries for the recharge zone and the contributing zone of the Edwards Aquifer are very imprecise. The state affords more protection to the recharge area because anything that flows across the surface of the land in that area goes directly into the aquifer with no filtration. So this we have a problem because we'll often have these treatment plants that are discharging, maybe even within a mile of the recharge zone. But we're finding recharge features right around where these plants are and where these discharge points are. So the maps are not very precise. In some instances, it actually goes like across the county line, so we know that's probably not very accurate. So this is what they wanted to put there, and this is an extremely high-density subdivision. And that was the first thing that we got with the permit application. We went online and found that, and we were kind of appalled to see that many directly adjacent to a state natural area. So we have some issues that I'll go over. Because the state imposes limits on impact fees, citizens or ratepayers often end up subsidizing infrastructure for new development like this. This one's in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the City of Wimberley. Septic spacing regulations in Potomac County require a minimum lot size of 1 acre if it's served by a public water supply. So we have, if you were on septic, which we would prefer to see developments in these environmentally sensitive areas simply because there's not as many people producing sewage. So the need to transport the sewage and clean it up with larger plants, which often fail, especially if they have lift stations, is not an issue. So central sewage infrastructure allows a much greater density. So you have a lot more households producing a much higher volume of sewage in that area. So it can impact groundwater supplies and local wells, and emerging contaminants, and I'll talk a little bit about that later, can impact aquatic wildlife, and that was particularly a concern with this Honey Creek permit because there are a lot of native wildlife, benthic and amphibious, so it was very important to preserve some of these are endangered and threatened species. And the receding water bodies, that's our main thing, is we love that we have these clean rivers and creeks that are actually clean enough for recreation. Next. So here's what you see. The Edwards Aquifer Authority has been monitoring for what they call emerging or anthropogenic contaminants. And these are things that are mostly drugs, as you'll see here, that aren't metabolized. And so they go into the wastewater streams, and then you have your personal care products and all these things. But if you're seeing these, and these tests were taken at the Comal and Waco Springs, so those are appearing in the spring water, which means that the only place these can come from is the wastewater stream. So we know that the wastewater stream is having a negative impact on Texas waterways. Next. So we also realized, we've done a lot of studies, TCQ needs some help with oversight. And I always say, like, beating up on TCQ is like punching somebody's abused wife. I mean, they are severely under budgeted by the state. So EPA has said there is a problem with compliance for these wastewater treatment plants in Texas. Next. So here you see Wimberley is a fast-growing area. This map's a little bit old. There's actually some new permits here. So we have the blue is the existing direct discharge permits. They go either to the Guadalupe this way or the Sabinal Watershed this way. And then in the red, some of those permits have already been granted on the red. Some of them, with our intervention, have been converted to land application permits. And so we've got a lot of activity going on here. And really, when you look at a map like this, we're coming out with a report in the near future where we're calling on having a water reuse district for parts of Comal County, because this water should be used beneficially rather than just being dumped into the nearest stream or creek. Next. So, our opposition, the owner of the Honey Creek Ranch Municipal Utility District decided to withdraw the application for the direct discharge permit and convert it to what was called a land application permit. Now, normally we would consider that a victory because the land application permit is much more protective. You have it filtering through soils before it gets into the groundwater table instead of being discharged directly into the waterways. Next. So it creates three major problems with this development, and it's not all the sewage discharge, I will say, but that's the only thing that we have available to contest with the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. So there's over, there'll be over 100 acres of new impervious cover from housing units, which is streets, sidewalks, rooftops, anything where rainwater can't enter into the ground. And so it increases the volume and the velocity of the water that's flowing into those creeks. Thus it can permanently scour during a really heavy rain event. You'll have that water coming down so fast that it just scours out the creek bed. So if you could back up one, so you see the difference between this and the next slide and this. It's quite a bit of difference, and it's happening all over the United States. Next. So, additional nutrient inputs at Honey Creek associated with fertilizing yards, pathways, and other point and non-point sources of nutrient pollution in the stormwater runoff will deliver additional contaminants, including sediment, bacteria, oil and grease, trash, pesticides, and metals. And that's one area of concern that we really had that is hard to deal with in a wastewater permit. And that's why we try to negotiate settlements, because often we can get much better plans for stormwater management and use techniques that will clean that stormwater before it's discharged from the site. Next. So the amount, we looked at the permit application for the land application permit. We hire engineers to do this, and our engineers said the 84 acres they were setting aside was not going to be sufficient for taking in all of that wastewater. Then if you have like rain events and all, that field for the irrigation would be waterlogged, and it would really act like impervious cover and allow that stormwater to flow into Honey Creek. Next. So that issue here, in addition to the Honey Creek State Natural Area, we have one of the largest caves in Texas. So it's 20 miles of passageways. The entrance is on a ranch that's right next to the State Natural Area. And I've actually been in that cave. You have to wear a wetsuit, but you're actually swimming in the aquifer. So there's a lot at stake here. Like I said, when this permit came up, our hair stood up. We were like, why? Okay, next. So, limits to impervious cover on the Edwards Aquifer Recharge Zone are the best strategy we have to preserve caves. And those caves are the entrance to our water supply. Those are some of the largest recharge features that we have. So we were urging Comal County to provide additional protection for cave species, which would also protect water quality and also water quantity if these recharge features are protected. Next. So this is where it gets into the fun part. We joined with a local group, which we had actually helped to organize to contest a previous wastewater discharge permit in the Bulverde area, and that was Bulverde Neighbors for Clean Water. And then we also partnered with Texas Cave Management Association. We were really surprised during the hearing process when the Archdiocese of San Antonio joined us, and then we had property owners, contiguously property owners who were granted standing. So we all joined together, we worked together, we saw what is it that we want this to be amended in the wastewater permit, but also in the land use plan for the development itself. Now, this one was problematic because usually we will have a master development plan that's submitted. That one that you saw earlier, the map, the City of Kerrville rejected that. They said, no way, you're not doing that here. So we were kind of working blind on this one going into negotiating because we didn't have a lot of detail in terms of their land use planning. But we went for 15 hours, we were and that's typical. This time it was a Zoom meeting, and so we went back and forth with mediators from the State Office of Administrative Hearing, and around midnight we came up with a plan. So what we were able to get, well, neither side was really happy with, but we did manage to get 660 fewer homes. The treatment for the treatment plant would be UV treatment because we did not want chlorinated water, having the Honey Creek exposed to chlorinated water. We got a higher class of operator for the treatment plant, a larger storage area to store overflow from the treatment plant at times when it was raining and they couldn't irrigate. So we got them to promise never ever to put in for a direct discharge permit. And what we see typically, we've seen this a lot, is they will agree to do a land application permit. Then once the development is developed out in the phases, they will apply for direct discharge so that they could develop the acres that they have for irrigation. So in this case, those 84 acres will be preserved and will be for irrigation. They will never apply to go ahead and develop those and discharge directly. And that's an important one. So we got more soil depth for areas where they're going to irrigate. We got protection for springs and seep checks. Groundwater monitoring for the wells of the property owners who are contiguous to the property, and that's important because we want to know if their wells are being contaminated by either the sewage runoff or the stormwater runoff. So the development will, they were going to seal off all the existing wells and not pump from wells on the site for the subdivision. That comply with the dark sky ordinances, have backup power for the lift station, and that's a really important one too, because often sewage systems fail most often at these lift stations. That's where they're pumping sewage up a hill, raw sewage to be treated, and if the power goes out, those things can overflow and it is not pretty, I've seen it. So they're not going to use coal tar sealants on the roads, which are really harmful for water quality. There's going to be a big green space buffer. We also required buffers around several significant recharge features so that they could remain recharging the aquifers. And then they were reimbursing us $40,000 in legal expenses. And we typically do get reimbursed for legal expenses. So we still believe that the developments are too dense for this site, and we really do feel like especially as we don't know exactly how the property will be developed and what kind of mitigation measures there will be for stormwater pollution. We're going to keep working on it. So we will be hiring engineers to go over when they submit any kind of water pollution abatement plan, which they probably don't have to submit. We're hoping that TCEQ will require it because the site is contiguous to the recharge zone, but not on it. They're not legally required to submit that. We're going to be fighting for them to do that. And then the stormwater pollution prevention plan, we'll be reviewing that. And we can't contest those because those aren't permits. That's really just working with TCEQ and also with the local government to try to get them to ally with us and require some of this. And we'll be working with the City of Wimberley to make sure that their master plan, they actually have a good tree ordinance the drainage ordinances and all, to make sure that their ordinances are enforced. So, here's, and I guess y'all will have this available later. We did do a Save Hondo Creek Facebook page, so you can keep up with the latest news on that, contribute to the legal fund. We have also a petition up, and so this is going along. Next. So you can send money, you can get involved. I would say it's great to get involved, and I'm going to make a little plug because it's a legislative session now, and all three of us up here are working on the legislative, and so Margo is going to go over a particularly good bill that we like. But you can go on GIA's website and sign up for action alerts, and that will tell you about what's going on with our different member groups, or what's going on during the legislative session on what bills we need help with. So we would urge you to go and sign up for those alerts, and you might actually be sending us a message someday saying, hey, get the word out on this, which you're totally welcome to do. Okay, we also have a wastewater discharge page that has more than you ever wanted to know about sewage on it, but it's there as a reference, and people find that really helpful. I wanted to make a plug. I'm serving on the Texas Water Development Board's Regional Flood Planning Group and for the Guadalupe Basin, which y'all are in. And so I would urge you to get, especially if you're on property that's getting flooded, to get engaged in this process. You can find out more. They have a good website. You're welcome to attend our meetings, to submit comments, and we'd like to meet with y'all personally at some point to see what your concerns are for this area so that we can address it. We're charged by coming up with a plan by 2022. So we'll be working on that a lot, and we'll need your input. And thank you so much.
She has been a remarkable steward for Jacob's Well and Cypress Creek, which ultimately flows into the Blanco River. Welcome, Ron.
I think I'm going to follow Annalisa's guide here, but I'm going to stand behind you and see if I can get a little closer so I can click. Can y'all see me okay if I hide behind the other speakers? So I was a Texas Master Naturalist class of 2002. So welcome to the club. I'm really proud of what you guys do. I took it to my career, so I am not an active volunteer member. But I get to work with all of you guys, particularly the Hays County Master Naturalists and the Capital area. And I look forward to coming out here. It was a beautiful drive from Wimberley. And so the challenge today, or the topic today, was to talk about the Jacob's Well watershed as kind of a model for what could go on in a preservation sort of sense, or stewardship sort of sense. So I hope what I present here, even though it's over in Wimberley, serves as a model or gives some good guidance on what could happen in the future. David Baker, the executive director and founder, was supposed to talk today, but you got me. Sorry. I promise this is all the words. The rest are pretty pictures, maps, and things like that. But we're a nonprofit started back in 1996 out of a desire to empower landowners to better serve the community through private conservation efforts and private stewardship. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, but namely what we do now is we support science so that we can educate and inform policy, and we can serve the lands that are most critical. So that's how we make our biggest impact. This looks a little dark, but there's the Neowise comment over Jacob's Well. And this is really what inspired, not the Neowise comment, but Jacob's Well inspired David Baker to really act early on when he moved to the area in the 80s. There were over 100 parcels that had access to, oh, that looks awesome. I like this. I'm a camper too, so I feel really comfortable with this. So 100 parcels had access to Jacob's Well, this Trinity Spring here. And it turned into kind of a big old keg party down there. And everybody and everybody's neighbor and everybody's kids' neighbors all came to the well to party. And it was getting loved to death. And so David started systematically buying and securing the rights. And he was able to purchase over half those parcels before he figured out that he couldn't just own it all himself. That wasn't going to solve the problem, and he had to find a different way. Next slide. Particularly because the well was starting to get very stressed out with drought, the cycle of Texas, persistent drought interrupted by frequent floods or intermittent flooding. This is a year after that Neowise comment came through. And this is about 1.5 cubic feet per second coming out of the well. The well is desperately impacted by groundwater use in the area, and all of the neighbors within Wimberley are reliant on groundwater. So the more people that move, the more people that use water, less water comes out of the spring. And the spring is the headwaters for Cypress Creek, which flows through downtown. So it's all a very connected situation. And we have to do something about it. Next slide. So David, pictured here several times, I figured if he wasn't gonna be here, I was gonna show pictures of him. David really started gathering a lot of people and involving everyone in the solution and spread out the burden across many, many shoulders. And he empowered people to think outside the box and contribute their solutions to this. And he elevated the folks that had the good ideas. And it's amazing what has happened. So I'll walk you through a little bit of that. First, just to put this in perspective, like one more time. We're here in Kerrville, and we're talking about an area far to the east. Out here in Kerrville, you guys have the Western mentality, West Texas mentality, and respect for water. In Wimberley, there's a lot of folks coming in, and they're not familiar with Texas's drought. Go ahead and click one more time. So it's a different, it's an uphill battle to teach people about how scarce water is out there. Click one more time. It has something to do with geology. I'm married to a geologist, and I'm a geographer, so I'm sorry, but you're getting lots of maps today. These rock units that you see up there are surface geology, and they're grouped by aquifer. So when these rocks are at the surface, they are kind of like a sponge, and Annalisa did a good job of talking about the recharge area. So when the aquifer rocks are exposed at the surface, they're like an open sponge, and when it rains, it goes right down into those rocks. I'll give you a visual later. But Jacob's Well is a Middle Trinity spring right there. That light green, or not quite light green, middle green. And that recharge zone comes into play because there's a lot of development over that area. And Annalisa talked about the impervious cover that comes with development and the pollution content. So upstream of the well, we worry about the water quality, especially when it starts to get developed. Click one more time. But this isn't something that just happens in our area. It's happening all over the hill country. And the Trinity aquifers and all these springs, these little blue dots out in the hill country, that's really what we have to protect. So this isn't just something that happens in that round circle. This is something that's happening all over the hill country. Go ahead and click again. But a closer look so that we can use the story of Jacob's Well as an example, and maybe as a success story. We're still waiting on that. Jury's still out. Jacob's Well is listed here with the JW, and then there's a PBS there, that's Pleasant Valley Springs. Those are two main Middle Trinity springs that help support the Blanco River and Cypress Creek when the rain turns off. They provide base flow to those creeks, very similar to what happens anywhere in the hill country. So protecting those springs means that there's more base flow, which means there's better swimming conditions in the creeks. This is an overlay of all the Hayes County parcels. So where you see those dark gray areas, those are quarter-acre lots. Everybody wants to be my neighbor. Actually, I just moved to Wimberley 2 years ago, so I'm part of the problem. Just full disclosure on there. But those green areas are the super sensitive areas that Annalisa was talking about. Those are the areas where the water goes straight down into the aquifer, and if we pave over it, then it has problems doing that. Go ahead and click again. And just as a visual, okay, so we have our green areas up on the top, so we've turned it on the side. Jacob's Well is also a cave, very similar to Honey Creek. It's not quite 20 miles, but it's 2 miles, and you have to access it only on scuba. There's no airspace. The cave passage is shown there. It's in the Cow Creek. Click once. There's Jacob's Well. Click one more time. The Middle Trinity aquifers are a layer cake. Geologists have grouped these 3 layers into the Middle Trinity. They're the Lower Glen Rose, the Hensel Sands, and the Cow Creek Limestone. The Cow Creek Limestone is really, really well known for cave development, and that's where the majority of the cave passage happens here. That's also a sweet spot. If you have wells in the area, that water is fresh, it's delicious, everybody wants some. Next slide. The Lower Trinity are the rocks that are just below that area. There's the Hammett Shale that is kind of like a tortilla in between the two. Doesn't read, so if you set a tortilla on top of a kitchen sponge, not a lot of water would get down into the kitchen sponge till that tortilla really, really got this saturated, right? Similarly, on the surface, if you had that tortilla and it rained, that's kind of like the contributing zone, where over time, if the tortilla gets really saturated, it might let some water down into the ground, but most of the time it would roll off that kitchen sponge. Does that make sense? It's a little bit weird, but that's how I roll. All right, keep going. It rains right on top of there. It goes straight down into the Middle Trinity Aquifer, and it provides great recharge. One more time. And it flows out at Jacob's Well. This is how it goes at Pleasant Valley Springs. This is how it goes at Rebecca Springs, Clepac Springs, many of the Middle Trinity Springs. This is how it looks. You could switch these layers around, and this is how it works for the Edwards Aquifer springs too. So San Marcos, Comal. It rains on the surface, water goes down, and it pops out in springs. And everybody argues over who owns it and when. Right, Daniel? Yeah. All right. So a closer look at Jacob's Well, you see the huge development just upstream in that area that's the critical recharge zone. And I've outlined, or I've highlighted here in yellow, kind of I feel like it would be Picasso's version of an Easter Island. What do you think? Maybe? All right, remember that shape, look one more time. I'm going to walk you through, David Baker's a complex guy. He fires on all cylinders all the time. And so there's not just one timeline to explain what's going on. You have to have 4 of them. So this is my cheat sheet for what he has accomplished since 1988 to present. I guess he hasn't accomplished it, but he has inspired and applauded and fought and screamed and yelled and stomped his feet and laughed and danced his way through getting a lot done for this area. And it falls into 4 categories. First, he started with that private stewardship. He was just going to buy everything and save the well. Well, that didn't work. So next, he was like, okay, we got to figure out what the best things are, what we could do to best protect it. So he really started on research and monitoring efforts. And then he figured, okay, this is bigger than me. We really do need to coordinate the management of this. And he fought hard for a groundwater conservation district. And then figured out that public conservation really spreads it out equitably to best manage these resources for everyone and provide an access point for everyone to enjoy what he loves most. Okay, go ahead. So there's the Easter Island at Paso, right? Google Earth is awesome because it has a historic viewer. So you can go back and you can look back in time, back to this is 1995. And we're going to zoom in down here in this area because in 1995, he hadn't started buying any of the lands. Click again. There's the zoomed in area. And so I just want to show you what the Jacob's Well natural area, what he pulled off, or what was pulled off, inspired by him, how it looks through time. So click again. In 2002, He had purchased most of the rights, but you see there's a gigantic tennis center down here. Right here, tennis center. Those are all tennis courts, a pool, and a big community center. This is an RV park. This is a up-and-coming mobile home development, all upstream of the well, in the critical, most sensitive area. Click again. By 2008, he had purchased the land, and it was destined for the county. The county had just passed a pretty massive $30 million parks bond, and they targeted this as one of their highest priority projects. And in 2010, they transferred things. But David had already purchased these lands and had the mobile homes removed. He started pulling up asphalt. Go ahead again. And by 2018, you see massive differences. He removed a lot, well, he did. A lot of the impervious cover was removed. And this massively benefits recharge because it pulls off that impervious cover. It provides more vegetation and healthy vegetation for recharge. And it lessens the water demand on the system, especially just upstream of the well. It's pretty cool, right? Max rock. So, didn't stop there. This is the spring shed of Jacob's Well, and you can see that dark green area is our recharge zone. And there was another, I think it was a 1,600 home subdivision planned for Coleman's Canyon. And he started fighting to lessen the impact of that development, and finally just ultimately purchased it. And it's called, he's proposed another project just upstream and adjacent to the natural area that would expand the natural area and protect more of the recharge zone. This one has Wimberley Bat Cave, and you can see exactly where the water goes down into the aquifer there. Keep going. And even bigger, additional conservation lands are out there, but there's so many large parcels out there we could purchase now, and 10 years from now they might be subdivided or developed. So now is the time. What we've proposed is a conservation fund to be able to purchase those high priority lands. This one hasn't gotten funded yet. Go ahead. So the coordinated management aspect of this through Hayes County, or through the Hayes Trinity Groundwater Conservation District, they established, one more time, I think I hit the roller wheel all of this. One more, there we go. In 2020, they passed the groundwater management zone for this area, and they decided that this spring shed was unique and threatened and needed its own drought thresholds. So fantastic, there's David celebrating at the meeting where everybody's been supporting. He had a massive technical committee do the research. He worked with community members to understand the impact, and it's a fantastic tool for the groundwater district to be able to manage the pumping in that area that influences the flow at Jacob's Well. Go ahead. So it established this Jacob's Well groundwater management zone, which coincides with the watershed upstream of Jacob's Well Spring. Go ahead again. And really, what it does is it doesn't affect the exempt well owners, because those are exempt. Those are a class of wells that the state of Texas is uncomfortable really managing. But there's some really big permits in the area that influence the spring flow directly. And what that does is it just says, hey guys, we've hit the limits, the limbo stick. we're getting into a critical stage. Let's reduce our pumping. Let's reduce our pumping a little more. Let's reduce our pumping a little bit more. And that affects a lot of the neighborhoods in the area, but really those neighborhoods drive by the creek every day, so it benefits them too. They can't irrigate their lawns as much, but they can still enjoy the creek in the spring. Go ahead. If we took, one more click, if we took the history of the monitored data, which was set up in 2005, this was foresight. Actually, David coerced my husband and I to establish a USGS gauge at Jacob's Well and start collecting data. And if we took the drought triggers and applied them back in time, the ones that go with that Jacob's Well management area, you can see that you're in critical drought a lot of time. That's some really stressed out fish. And when it gets really low, like it did in 2009, in 2011, 2013, and later in 2014, the groundwater wells in the area are also impacted. So this is a canary in the coal mine many times. These springs can tell us what groundwater storage is in our aquifer systems. So they're a good monitoring point for what's going on in the aquifer system. Every well owner should be paying attention to this, not because they swim in the spring, but because it's an example of what's going on underground. Go ahead. This is a look at Jacob's Well Spring and also Pleasant Valley Spring, the one beside in the Denke River, over the last year. And you'll notice a slow decline. Typically, you have a decline during the high water use period through August, but there was not really any recharge that has happened over the winter and the spring. So we're starting the irrigation season at very, very low levels. And without a big rain or several small rains, which is what I would prefer, I like to do the slow rain dances. Not the fast rain dances. I'm not a fan of floods. But we do need to get some of those big recharging rains so that we can see the kick back up in the flow. Short of making it rain, the things that we as a society, as a community, have the ability to plan for are these innovative solutions. Water conservation is something that every single person, no matter what age they are, can do to help the situation. Alternate supplies like rainwater or beneficial reuse are becoming more and more employed. That's fantastic. Even here, I checked the restrooms. They use non-potable water to flush the potties. That makes sense. We need more of that. Recharge enhancement, so those green infrastructure, like ones. So we can meet these challenges of the influx of the flood of people that are coming to our areas. The water demand increases, the wastewater challenges, the impervious cover challenges that come with development, and the non-source pollution. We can meet them and address them with innovative solutions, click one more time, and turn them into opportunities. We can look at ways to develop smartly. That's not a word, and maybe don't quote me on that one. But we can decide where it's appropriate to put development and conserve the areas where it's not. We can look at site harvested supplies and how that can really augment and support the needs of our communities. Beneficial reuse, green infrastructure, and awareness. When we have these challenges, people boost their interest, and we should leverage that and use it as an opportunity to educate Go ahead. So One Water is this concept of taking a holistic approach to the water cycle, looking at it how you can slow that down on your parcel of land. And we do it at the WVWA, the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association office. We have installed bioswales to be able to slow down the runoff and allow more infiltration. We have a rainwater harvesting system, and we monitor the well there. You can see when the rainwater harvesting system went online, and then there were some troubles. I think there was either a freeze or a pipe burst, and the well had to be used again. But you can see the reliance on wells can be switched when you just employ a rainwater harvesting tank. And this is all within proximity of Jacob's Well. Imagine if we did that throughout the watershed. Go ahead. On a campus-wide scale, the first One Water school in Texas, Louisville Primary, that's partially why I was late. I have a first grader that goes here, and he gets to see that blue water in the body every day he's at school. It's a huge success. That blue water means that it's coming from AC condensate and rainwater. So it's a site harvested supply. 84 air conditioners are on the top of the building. And those air conditioners drip like crazy. They capture that water so that they can use it to flush the potties. Makes sense, and it's done here in this building too. Then they teach the kids where the water is coming from. That's a plumbing window, and it is such a popular thing with the kids. They love to see it. It's received the Texas Water Development Board Raincatcher Award for the innovative ways of treating and reusing the water on site and teaching the kids about how to do it. At a regional scale, right now in Blanco, they were talking about expanding their direct discharge permit as a way to meet the growing demand for real estate and development in that area. And they wanted to do it through direct discharge, but they have a massive water shortage too. So we're trying to work with them, and the city council is on board. They're open for it if we can just make it easy so that they can double plumb their system and have irrigation water, beneficial reuse on community scale. Everyone downstream, go back one. Everyone downstream would benefit because when they discharged, we sampled and we could tell that the nutrients, the phosphorus, which is an indicator of wastewater, and the nitrates were definitely higher than just in the environmental or in the regular discharge. Then they stopped, and those nutrient levels dropped. And you can see the difference up here in the upper right-hand side, where in 2019, there were massive algal blooms because of the discharge. Then they stopped discharging and switched to their land irrigation, and it cleaned up immediately. There was a huge switch even in the population, the fish population and the macroinvertebrates switched and have gone back to a more natural or a normal situation for elementary streams. So it benefits everybody downstream. Next slide. This is my ending slide, so thank you very much for the timing. I appreciate that. I'll echo what Annalisa said. Y'all stay involved, stay aware, read up. You are the inspiration for your community, and you are the watchdogs for what's going on. You can help identify those innovative solutions and empower people to be part of them. If we can help, or if you need some inspiration or a hint, we can get you some, or if you'd like to keep up with what's happening in our area, you can do it through our website. On Facebook, we're pretty active. We also have a Twitter account, still haven't gotten into Instagram. But one of these days, somebody will inspire me and will change the world. And then also our mostly monthly newsletters where we talk about the hydro report and the big issues going on in the town. So, or not the town, in the area. But thank you guys so much and congratulations on completing the
Margo Denke is a landowner in Bandera County. She has also led the Friends of the Hondo Canyon in a remarkable battle to protect Commissioners Creek and Hondo Creek. And then building off of that remarkable experience, she is now helping her neighbors in the Sabinal River Basin fighting some similar uphill battles. So Margo, welcome. Please share your story.
I want to thank Cheryl and Constance who brought me here today. So my story is a difficult one because I live in a very small community in Hondo Canyon. And just as I was retiring as an endocrinologist, and I used to practice here in Kerrville and then moved my practice to Bandera, this happened to our community. And so I left one full-time job and took on another one. And what I want to share with you is the difficulties, the challenges, and the wonderful aspects of getting to know all of my neighbors and getting to know them very well. So first, on the next slide, I'd like you to meet my neighborhood. Hondo Canyon is named Hondo, which is Spanish for deep. And it's a broad canyon south of here that is bordered by Tarpley Pass and Saco Pass. And my little town has 37 people in it. We have a one-room schoolhouse, which was converted to our community center, and it's run by the Tarpley Volunteer Fire Department. We have many small spring-fed creeks that flow into a creek called Hondo Creek, and on the next slide is kind of a map here. And what you can kind of see, there's mountains, or I call them mountains, but hills. And in the basin here is Hondo Creek in the dark blue, and then we have multiple small little creeks. And I live on one of these little creeks called Commissioners Creek, and the creek was so beautiful when we bought the property, we built a bridge over it because my husband got the tractor stuck in the creek, and it took 3 weeks to get somebody to come out and pull it out after one of these big rains. So as the population of Texas grows, all of these large ranches are subdivided, and we have many more people living on smaller parcels of land, and we've seen that in both the previous presentations. But from an environmental perspective, more people mean greater waste production. We have stool, urine, food scraps, water use for toilets, bathing, food preparation, and laundry that are all needs to get rid of. And then we have a greater need for drinking water. So we all are experiencing this new growth problem. On the next slide, I want to have you meet my new neighbor, Camp OTX. Upstream from me, 2.5 miles, Camp OTX created a large dam, and they blocked the creek and the spring that fed their section of the creek. We had no water in the creek for 10 months while their lake filled up. And because of the rules of Texas, because this lake was less than 200 acre-feet of water, they were allowed to do this for their own personal enjoyment. When they decided to open the camp and use this lake for recreational uses, it required a permit. In addition to what they did by stopping the creek flow, they also decided that in their camp, they needed to do a direct discharge of all the wastewater from their camp. And they were going to plumb that to the downstream, very, very most downstream edge of their property to put it in the creek. So here, all of us on Commissioners Creek, we're going to have no spring flow from the headwater spring. We would rely on these small little springs that were further south. And instead of the spring flow, we were going to have wastewater flow. Fortunately, both of these requests that Camp OTX made required permits from the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And both of these requests allow for public input. And that's where Friends of Hondo Canyon was born. And that's where I got to meet all of my neighbors. Before I go through my presentation to give you some clues, I do want to tell you that I have wonderful neighbors and I have wonderful friends. And with all of us pulling together over a 2-year battle, we entered into mediation. And we weren't quite as fast as Annalisa was in her mediation of hours on the mediation table. Ours took 3 months of mediation. But we were able to achieve the very first zero discharge permit. And Camp OTX will never be allowed to put wastewater into the creek. In terms of the stopping of spring flow, we are still navigating this with TCQ, but I can tell you that as we fight battles, there's always compromise, and we pick our sides and be happy because this is still our new neighbor, and Camp OTX is opening up in a few weeks, and we wish them success. So what I want to now go through is, how does a grassroots organization of laymen approach a regulatory problem? And really, this is only by the grace of God that we can do these things. So my first concept to talk about is a community must become aware of a developer's plan. And you can't believe how I found this out. So we have a little restaurant in our town called Mac and Ernie's. And one of my neighbors came up with a piece of paper one night and said, Margo, have you seen this? Have you seen this? And he got this piece of paper from a cousin who got it from a neighbor. And it was a mailed announcement saying that a wastewater discharge program was being planned upstream. And he says, what are you going to do about this? And I said, I have no idea. Can you ask somebody else? Anyway, so this is what I did about it. My husband is a loving person, and he thinks I'm a nut. And so I said, okay, we're on a low budget here. Okay, so sandwich bag, fold up, notice my husband was the folder, tie a string to it, go around to every ranch gate you can get to. It took me 6 hours just to go around ranch gates. And I tied one of these things to everybody's ranch gate in our neighborhood. And I found out from my neighbors who said, I was so PO'd when I came out of my gate and I saw this plastic thing in it. And then I opened it up and I read about what was planned in our neighborhood. And I was thankful that you came and brought this to me. So when we have, our first problem is getting our community involved and understanding. It doesn't take a lot of money. And we don't have to say ugly things about what's happening. We just have to say the truth, that someone was planning wastewater discharge into a virgin creek and we didn't want this to happen. And so this takes boots on the ground and it takes time. And if you look at the second concept, there is no white knight. Do it yourself. Get going. And then know that as you are doing it, you're going to meet your neighbors and you're going to hear from them and discuss with them, and together your voices will come vine. What I found out from my neighbors in the beginning is everyone was looking for that white knight to come up and save the day. And they said, Edwards Aquifer Authority, do it. Well, the Edwards Aquifer Authority only, by TCQ standards, is limited in location by county lines. And Tarpley is 8/10 of a mile from the county line. And if this camp was a little bit farther south, we would have the Edwards Aquifer Authority as our white knight, and we would go through. But we didn't have that. And then they asked for other organizations. Annalisa Peace was one of the organizations. They asked, well, at the time that our permit came out, there were 7 other permits in the hill country. And, you know, Annalisa has a wonderful organization, but we needed to start this ourselves, to get together ourselves, because we can't rely on that white knight. And everyone thought that white knight had a lot of money to take care of all this problem. And so I had to say, no, we're not doing that. So we picked up the mirror and saw, there's the white knight. And this is part of the change of how we do things. So concept 3, with legal help, an organization can be formed. I have been trying to help other people, and sometimes people say, oh, those lawyers, they're too expensive, don't do it, you can do it all yourself, get all those free help. I would not omit this expense. You need help. This is a regulatory issue. There are so many rat holes that you're going to find out when you're trying to work with a problem. You need that legal help to manage this. We created a 501c3, and there are little details like if you are going to fight something like this, you have to have a purpose of your organization to make sure that all of the contributions given go for that purpose. So if I had first, in my naivete, said, okay, wastewater discharge, that's our purpose, and I only had that, I wouldn't be able to fight the water rights permit for the lakes. So make sure that you remember that you don't know everything, and lawyers are expensive, but this is a time when you need help because this is a big deal that will permanently change the land in creeks as you know it. So my concept 4 here is you need a game plan. And you have to have a short-term goal and a long-term goal. And you also have to understand that the landscape changes as you get involved. We were navigating and trying to negotiate with our new neighbors. Well, they'll change their plan. So you have to be able to change your plan and integrate and move. And as a doctor, I went to Harvard Medical School, and on one of the outside buildings, there's a wonderful quote that was etched in stone by Louis Pasteur: chance favors the prepared mind. And so in your game plan, you're prepared, and then you, there by the grace of God, things change, you have a chance, and you go with it and move with it and keep praying. Concept 5. This was a difficult one. Humility rules. I had so many people giving me suggestions of what to do. Some days I would wake up, I'd get 5 phone calls. You need to do this, and you need to do this, and here, I found this person, you need to call them. Okay. So you can get hardened and say, well, you have all those suggestions, I'm just going to do my thing because I know what I'm doing. Well, you really shouldn't do that. It's easy to dismiss the suggestions by others, but make sure you're really, really listening. You don't know everything, and someone might give you an idea. They might have a way of managing a problem, a different way of looking at it, and you have to open up your heart and listen to your neighbors. And in listening, sometimes you can find out that they will help you and do some of those phone calls themselves, but they have a good idea. Let me give you an example. I had so many people telling me the Edwards Aquifer Authority was the way to go, 0.8 of a mile, go, go, go. Well, I tried so many ways to contact the Edwards Aquifer Authority, including going to the City of San Antonio, to the Conservation Board there, which is run in the City of San Antonio Parks and Recreation Department. And I begged them, I said, couldn't you talk to the Edwards Aquifer Authority for us, because we're right in the contributing zone. And believe it or not, through all these back doors that we don't understand, I got a call one day from the Edwards Aquifer Authority Science Group, and they said, we would like to make Commissioners Creek part of our science project to understand possible areas of wastewater, and we'd like to come out and sample your creek. And they did. So we have not only the creek samples we did to prove to TCQ that we had a pristine creek, but we now have a set of samples from the Edwards Aquifer Authority, and we have a promise from them to come back and resample the creek. So if I had listened to my own heart, which said, this is stupid, we're not in the Edwards Aquifer Authority, don't waste your time, this never would have happened. I listened, and it did happen. So humility rules, and we keep listening. Concept 6 is momentum. Setting the pace requires researching the deadlines you have to meet, and remembering that every request can't be an emergency. So I can't go out and send you an email every day, emergency, emergency, give me money. Because after a while, if you got a few of those emails, you'd say, okay, I don't have that much money, so we're done. So part of the momentum is figuring out, okay, where are we? Where are we going? When am I going to need money? When am I going to need your time? When am I going to need your voice? And then trying to ask people, because everyone's busy, when can they spare it? Concept 7, Morton. So that's my 8 concepts for community involvement. I want to finish very briefly with showing you a map and explaining to you that today, maybe right now or maybe in an hour, the House floor of our representatives is going to do the 3rd vote on HB 4146, which is legislation to prevent wastewater discharge into pristine creeks. And we're going to try to get this map so I can show you where this happened. Basically, if we look at these, at the requirements that TCQ has with the Federal Clean Water Act, for the last 10 years they've had to sample creeks and look for phosphorus and determine if a creek and other nutrients and determine if a creek was pristine. And so what they have found is less than 2% of the streams in Texas have remained unpolluted. And that's defined as a undetectable phosphorus level, less than 2%. And these are 37 classified stream segments. And if you overlay the location of those stream segments with where we have wastewater discharges, you'll see it's in less populated areas, areas where there are no discharges. So one of the suggestions that I didn't want to listen to from my neighborhood was get legislation going. And so we have partnered with a whole host of experts and put HB 4146 and Senate Bill 1747 before the legislative session this year. And I have to tell you, we're very proud that today will be the 3rd hearing of HB 4146 in the House vote. yesterday we had the second reading, and we got a positive vote 75 to 69, so it's tight. And we're praying that today we can pass the House if we can. We will march on to the Senate race, and I call it a barrel race, and if you give me your email, I'll send you all my barrel racing stories of this challenge. But we hope that we can pass legislation to protect these streams. And with that, that's all I have to say. Oh, hang on, maybe she's trying to get out this map. But what you'll see is there's one river that is pristine, and that is the Devil's River. See all the way over here to the left, that lovely, long Devil's River. Now you can see these darker blue segments in the middle of Texas. That's where we're at, where there's been little development and very few wastewater discharges. But it's not a lot of stream segments. Less than 2% of the stream segments would be protected by this bill. But that's all we have left that have not received wastewater discharge in Texas. So I hope that all of you can join me in praying for HB 4146 for passing the floor this morning. And then I'm going to ask for all of your help in calling every one of our 30 Texas senators regarding Senate Bill 1747, because we want this to pass. Thank you.
All right, everybody, let's thank our conservation heroes, Margo, Annalisa, and Robin, one more time. So now we're going to transition into our Q&A session. I've got a couple of questions that I'd like to ask the presenters, and then I'm hoping that you have some questions that you would like to pose as well. If I hear crickets, then I will continue to ask questions. But again, don't be shy. If you have a question to ask, please raise your hand. We've got some volunteers with microphones. Wait till the microphone is in your hand so that everyone can hear your question, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to ask one question that I'd like each of our presenters to answer. We heard about the dramatic growth that is happening across the hill country. As Robin said, everyone wants to be her neighbor. We heard that there's only 2% of the creeks and rivers that are still pristine and not impacted by wastewater discharge. Huge developments that Annalisa has worked to try to mitigate. Lots of challenges, day in and day out. What gives each of you hope? What inspires you to wake up tomorrow and keep doing what you're doing? And I'd love to go in order of our presenters, if that's okay. And Annalisa, again, the microphone over to you.
Well, part of it is people like y'all, who are interested in this message. Our organization, Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, we were actually founded around 2003 by groups like people like David Baker, and we had 9 original member groups. Now we have 54 member groups. I think we're going to have 55 by the end of the week. And then this message is being better received, like people get it now. I mean, when I started doing this 16 years ago with the Aquifer Alliance, we were formed to work with the state legislature because these groups had been like in San Antonio, in Austin, and St. Marcos would get good regulations, and then the legislature would come back and beat it down. And this bill that Margo was talking about, we first filed an iteration of that in 2005. In 2017, it got as close as this, and then we were actually knocked off the calendar about the bathroom bill because they spent 3 days talking about the bathroom bill, and we didn't get our final vote. So we're really hoping, but I think I can see a big momentum happening where people are realizing that what we have here in Central Texas and the Hill Country is really precious. And so we have a lot of allies, and we need a lot of allies because these big national developers, which Frank and I started out in San Antonio in the 90s working on this, so we know the drill. But the main component of this bill that Margo mentioned is Texas home builders. So this is a lot of big national builders who want to come in, and they really don't respect what we have, the treasure that we have in the Hill Country. We have staff, and we've done a lot of research, and there's ways, like was mentioned about the water concept and all. There's ways that this can be developed where accommodate people moving here, but still protect the natural resources. And we are actually, there was another bill for green infrastructure that I think might be passed this session, called by Representative Weiner. Yeah, so we're making some progress that is beyond.
So there's two big things that give me hope. One, I'm so honored to be part of this choir. This is a talented group of people. The folks that can go out and fight, that have skills that I don't have, that can sit in mediation, that can argue, that know what to argue for, that can take a good map and make an argument that just mic drops. And I hope that that map does that in the Senate. I hope that that map speaks to everybody in Texas and says, you know what, this is not just a neighborhood bill, this is for everybody. But it's those grassroots that support it. That's just amazing. So that's what being part of this team or this choir is to me. The second thing that gives me hope is I had the opportunity. With COVID, it's been really hard to be out in front of people. And I love you guys. I love being up here, and I love listening to other people and building on momentum that's already started, kind of stoking the fire and watching what happens because of that. And I had the opportunity to meet second graders at Blue Hole Primary, and they're the GT students, so there were only 8 of them. But it was the first ever school tour, class, student tour of their building. And we talked about all of the STEM principles that are at play that were designed into the building. And when they figured that out, they were pointing it out everywhere. When we walked around, they were like, why does it do this? And why is it like this? And how could this be better? And how does this work? And that is amazing because those are the people that are going to be home builders later. It'll be a long time. I got a first grader, so it's a really long time for them to get to that point, but eventually they will be, and I think that is the tide that's changing. I think that the shoulders of giants that we stand on that started the momentum earlier before I got here really set the stage nicely and built a coalition that's very, very effective and very talented and play nice together.
So I also have 2 areas of hope. The first is the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. In the 1980s, they had to stop people from swimming in. And if you've been to Washington, D.C., it's a big river. It's very polluted. And and they cleaned up all of these accidental spills of wastewater. And last year they announced, welcome back to the river, come recreate in our river. And they're going to change people's minds, and that's an exciting thing. It took 40 years, but it happened. And my second hope is community. And think of the community you have with the Master Naturalist. You're a community that cares, and we have our communities that can get together and make this change.
In the back, does this work? All right, so what I'd like to do now is open it up to questions. Again, if you have a question, please raise your hand, and a volunteer will bring you a microphone. So this is your day, your event. This is your time to ask your questions. These remarkable people. And I'm gonna let y'all share this microphone.
Okay, so I have two questions. One for Rob, one for Annalisa. First question for Rob. You talked about around your building that built some bioswales. For the other property, David Margo involved, has he done other things to try to contain? Has he done other things to try to contain the flood waters on his property so that they'll soak in instead of just running off?
Absolutely, good question. So the green infrastructure aspect of the conservation lands that we hold, in particular Coleman's Canyon, there were 5 buildings that were in utter disrepair and a dump, because in the far reaches of the country, people don't pay for trash service if they don't have to. So there's been a green fielding effort, and you can check the website and see how the houses have been deconstructed and the materials repurposed. And then also trash cleanups. Every chance we can, we use volunteers to help remove that debris. And then a really cool idea is getting the county, when they go through and do the road clearing for the trees and the power lines, they drop all of the mulch at Coleman's Canyon so that can be used for bioswales. And we're working with the Restoration Rangers, which is a subgroup of the Hays County Master Naturalists, to deploy those bioswales, because it's just upstream. And then there's firms and some scout groups have done trails that have been appropriately graded through the area. That's probably the shining example of another opportunity.
Thank you. And so my second question for Annalisa. So trying to think of how you can get consumers involved. Are there alternative products to the pharmaceuticals and personal care products that can be offered as alternatives for people to use when they need to mandate it, that you can't do some of the other bad stuff that are polluted with phosphorus?
Well, I'm going to add on to the first question first with your indulgence. I brought here a copy, Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance. We're big proponents of green infrastructure, and we do have a low-impact development manual that's designed to be used for the hill country. You can download that for free on our website. I brought a copy of it here. Yeah, there it is back there. But yeah, you can order copies, but you can also download it for free. And we have a community rain gardens project where we work with neighborhoods on the recharge zone in San Antonio to build these rain gardens and then monitor. Water quality was improved, and so we really are going for those techniques, and we'd like to see that built into new developments. So yeah, I would encourage you to go. That program was so successful that San Antonio River Authority took it over, and now they pay for the whole thing, which makes us really happy. So on your question about emerging contaminants, there are programs, and I don't know if y'all have it, with the med drop programs. Those are really important, because we found out that lot of even nursing homes and hospitals and all were disposing of unwanted medication. By flushing them down the toilet. You know, attacking them at that point is good, but really what we need to do is we need to work on our wastewater systems because this wastewater is entering our groundwater through leaks. So we really need to get serious on getting more robust wastewater treatment systems, getting beneficial reuse like the one water system that Robin talked about. City of San Antonio was mandated years ago to have a water reuse system because we were seen as wasting so much of the aquifer water. But those reuse systems are putting the wastewater on the land where it can filter through and remove a lot of those contaminants. And then we need to also, I think, ask the state for more strict standards for wastewater treatment because they do have the technology to remove a lot of this. So I appreciate, you know, putting it on the consumer, but I don't know any way to get your body to metabolize more of those drugs. So.
Other questions?
I'd like to know how we can get advance notice of the developers that are disrupting our habitat. Large developments are beginning to appear all over the hill country, and so it's really affecting the ecology. So I'd like to know, how do we get the information of a developer that has bought a property, a ranch property, and is planning some kind of a development and what their plans are?
It's really sad, but I think my best recommendation is for your community to keep an eye on the agendas for your municipal and your county planning and zoning. County commissioners, a lot of these master development plans have to come up to the county. If you work with, you know, your county commissioners or your planning and zoning commissioners, a lot of times they'll give you a heads up. Another way to do it is through looking at if you have a water or electric utility to see who's applied for service. But there's no like one-stop shopping for these. I mean, we typically get notified of a lot of these because our service area is so big by people who call us and go, hey, this is going on in our area. But in a local area, if you're talking about your community, get involved with your city council, your planning and zoning commission, your utilities, and your county.
I can tell you that in some counties, you know, when you go outside the city limits, there's really very little regulation. So in Bandera County, one place to look at is at the Bandera County River Authority Groundwater District, because if they have a big permit for a new well, it goes through the board that meets once every 3 months. And the other is to start to pay attention in the newspaper to these little TCQ announcements that are in small print, usually on the classified ad section. And that will announce, they are required by law to announce their wastewater discharge permit application that's been received and is administratively complete. And then you can start the process there. But it is not easy, and it takes a little time.
Can I add to that one too? I think also get curious about the for sale signs. So while it's on your block, or if it's on your driving route and you see a large tract of land go up for sale, keep an eye on it. A lot of times, if a developer purchases it, they'll do something to the land after it's bought like clear it or chip a lot of the underbrush. And that's a good, kind of sign that something's going on. I think being involved with your groundwater district is a great way, because they would have to apply for water. They've got to get water from somewhere. So whether it's through the municipality or through the groundwater district, that's a good thing to look for. And as a former groundwater conservation district staff member, we are human. A lot of us have really good hearts. And we're pretty friendly. We're somebody's neighbor. So, I think that community, regardless of where you work or who you work for, the city council are someone else's neighbors too. So I think just being a community and realizing that everybody has an opinion and has a job to do, and ask them about it. Be curious. And respectful, but be curious.
Okay. So my question's for Annalisa. So when you have the opportunity to negotiate with the developers or permit, you can bring in other issues with that. Is there a chance to require, get them to agree that they'll implement like homeowner association restrictions and that kind of thing? This is more just a question about getting individual homeowners on board, so like you have to have water capture that.
Yeah, and we actually, on this Honey Creek well, that was one of the ones that I think will be implemented as well, is that the Homeowners Association will be required to use integrated pest management because of we were celebrating pesticides being used irresponsibly in that area. So that was an example. So yeah, you can certainly, most of these, if it's all you have to recharge zone, almost every single development these days has a mandatory homeowners association. And the reason that they do that is that, a developer wants to sell those homes and get out of there, and they have water pollution abatement structures, pest management practices that are required by the state. They want the homeowners associations to take those over. So in a lot of areas in the hill country, we will have mandatory homeowners association, and yes, you can get things in there that you want in perpetuity through those negotiated settlements. And if you see that they're not being observed, which we've had a few times, our negotiated the terms of our settlements, we've gone back and we just got a $175,000 settlement from a builder who did not actually, abide by the terms of the settlement.
Those homeowners associations are really good for landscaping requirements. City of Boston has had to go back through and work with homeowners associations that require that yards be green. And so the required irrigation of landscape and home builders want to put irrigation systems because they want that as an additional amenity for the home. But that is the quickest way to just dump a lot of water on lawns. I don't know, and it's more enlightened out towards the west side of Texas as it is further east. They don't have as much water awareness. But since customers are coming from anywhere in the country, they may not know about that irrigation requirement for the irrigation system and the impact it can have on water supplies. So that's a good thing to watch out for when you're talking about homeowners association requirements.
I have a question for the doctor. You're from a little town, Hondo, and we have a ranch in Medina, which also all the information is through Ace Hardware. Yes. application there to see the TCEQ notification?
The Bandera County newspaper publishes, it's usually the chosen newspaper, and that's where the TCQ notices go. They usually go on page 9 or 10. And then, I don't know if you subscribe to a weekly newspaper that comes out every Wednesday.
I will be sure that I do. There has also been a recreational camp bought across the road from us, Honey Creek Camp. And I think they just closed on it a week ago. And I don't know if they've applied for wastewater.
Yeah, they do not now have wastewater discharge permit, because in Bandera County, there's only one, and that's the City of Bandera. So if the camp just changed ownership, this might be part of their plans, and I would, you can sign up at the TCQ website for alerts for the county, but that will be a battle that might be happening.
I was just thinking about getting to know them on a friendly basis first.
That's a wonderful idea, and in fact, a lot of these discharge applications were made by people that didn't quite understand the sensitive nature of these pristine creeks. So first getting to reach out as a neighbor and say, hey, we welcome you, what's your plans? And sometimes if they get educated, they can change, and sometimes it takes arrows, like for us, but Camp OTX did change, and we applaud them for that.
I think keeping in mind the good examples, so on the campus level for like a camp, the Allstat Brewery in Fredericksburg has a reuse system. This building has a reuse system. The One Water School has a reuse system. So there are alternatives on a campus-wide scale where they can reuse that, and the utility bills where you've got the school meters, so that we should be able to, in the near future, be able to look at the actual savings and return on investment for that school. But even just as it is now, those are good examples to have in your hip pocket when you're talking to them at ACE and saying, there's a whole bunch of people that are doing, reusing water and not having to pay for water twice, because you get to use it twice. So I think that those early conversations are really valuable, and you guys being well-versed in shining examples is a good way to avoid mediation and lawyers. I love that you get to do all that. So I appreciate you for it. And Margo, you work wonders, but it'd be easy to have a good friendly conversation and avoid that if you can.
All right, don't be shy. Oh yeah, we got one up here.
And this may be, this is a very minor thing, I think, but in looking to encourage and fostering alternative water sources, I think Kerr County offers a rebate to assist homeowners with rainwater catchment systems, and Gillespie County does not. And so I guess I would think there would be more communication with them in that, because to me, that's a resource that would be, absolutely.
Yeah, we're big fans of that.
As far as the rebate program goes, I think it might be tied to county finances, whether or not they have the ability to extend that to their residents, and whether or not the residents have spoken through investment to get that as a priority. I'm not familiar with the rebates here in Kerr County, but finding out what that story is so that you can tell it to Gillespie County would be a great way to start. If you can find the timeline of who had the idea, or what was the idea, and how was that followed through to bring the rebate program, and any numbers that they have on cost savings or offsets for the potable supply would be really valuable arrows to throw at Gillespie.
I want to make just one comment. Conservation. In Europe, the average daily water use is 38 gallons a day per person. In the United States, 110 gallons per person. So we have a lot of things we can do with our daily use of water to conserve that would help this problem.
All right, well, we are getting close to 11 o'clock, and so I just want to ask our panelists real quickly, do you have perhaps one parting message that maybe you didn't get a chance to share earlier in the morning? You really just want to make sure that it is heard and that it sticks and people take it home. Any parting words that y'all have been eager to share, perhaps you haven't had a chance?
I would say, yes, be vigilant. Our area is growing so fast, and the sooner, like was brought up, how do you know when these projects are coming? And it's not always housing development projects, it's all sorts of things, but the sooner that you know about it, the better prepared you can be, and the better chance you have of actually making a difference. And it's not always stopping it, it's improving it. And then I want you to know that we're there for you. I mean, people call us all the time, and that's our job is to help y'all do this and guide you through the processes, be a fiscal agent if that's needed, all those things. And so don't hesitate to call us. All of us up here, we're there for you.
Can I just say one thing here? I'm a resident of Gillespie County, and we carry a small group of us who are very concerned about the condition of our river and the overdevelopment that we're starting to see, and the unsustainable development that we're starting to see. And so we have formed the Sabinal River Watershed Alliance for Gillespie County, and we did call Annalisa, and so they have been extremely helpful, and they're guiding us. We're small, but we're growing, and so if any of you in Gillespie County want to be a part of this, please come see me, give me your name and your phone number, and we'll get you on our list, and you can come to our next Zoom meeting, and you can become a part of something that is really going to make a huge difference in Gillespie County. Thank you, Annalisa.
Okay, my final thought is, how many of you are parents? Okay, so it goes over really well when you're trying to parent and you just say no, right?
Yeah.
Parenting rules apply to environmental issues. You have to find out how to say yes safely. And that's a good thought to keep in the back of your brain is what conditions make it so that our society, our community can say yes and accept the neighbor's time.
And my final comment is, let's save that water for the next generation.
All right, well, again, I would like to thank Robin, Annalisa, and Margo for sharing their remarkable experiences. I'd like to thank each of you for committing to the Texas Master Naturalist program, and especially want to thank Cheryl for her vision for creating today's roundtable and bringing us all together. This is unprecedented, this event for the Master Naturalist program. So thank you all for being a part of it. Again, as several folks have mentioned, we are here, we work to help landowners, community members facing challenges with water and natural resources. So go check out the Hill Country Alliance, the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, your friends at Hondo Canyon. And if you live in Gillespie County, care about the Sabinal River, go talk to my friend Deb over there With that, I'm gonna hand the mic over to Cheryl and just say thank you again. We really appreciate your stewardship.
I would say that's a home run. I want to just thank you all with a small token of our appreciation, our contribution to Friends of Hondo Canyon. Thank you very much from the Hill Country Chapter. Daniel to the Hill Country Alliance, thank you again for all your help. And to Robin and David from the Wimberley Valley Watershed Association, thank you very, very much for coming, driving all that way. These people had commutes this morning as we did, and to Annalisa for the Greater Edwards Aquifer Association. We just thank you. Thank you. The questions outstanding, amazing, and are we just now beginning? I say yes. We're gonna have a break for there's cake or a brownie, a chocolate dessert that Hank and Ryan brought. There's beverages. Help yourself. I see some mentors are gathering. 11:30.